Hey there and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Katie and I do videos about motherhood, adoption, and just general lifestyle videos. And today our topic is about adoption. I announced on my channel about 2 months ago that we're in the process of adopting again, so I wanted to do my second update on the process and how everything is going and how we are coping and handling everything. First of all, if you have not checked out my first video about our new adoptive placement, I will link that above so that you can check it out and kind of get the background before I jump into our current update. The last video I recorded in this kind of sit-down style to give an update was actually about a day or two before our kids were set to move in. Now, the only thing is we had known them at that point for quite a few months. We had met them several different times. They had done visits at our home, but they had not begun living here full time at the time I recorded my last video. So as you can imagine, a lot has changed since then. So the kids moved in basically exactly 2 months ago from today. So we have experienced a lot of the highs and lows of that first kind of adjustment phase together, and we're all kind of settling in and, having more problems arise, which I can talk about later. So for those of you who do not know, my husband and I adopted our youngest daughter. Her name is Brielle, and her adoption was finalized a little bit. It's been almost a year since her adoption was finalized, but she's been living with us now for about a year and a half. When she was placed with us, she was about 18 months, and now she is almost 3. And our new kids who have been placed with us, they're actually what is called a legal risk adoptive placement. What that means is that their parental rights have not been fully terminated because there was an appeal on their case. So the case is most likely to go to adoption, which is why they were moved from their old foster home and placed in our home, but we cannot legally adopt them until that appeal is either dismissed or dropped or something like that. So basically the goal is that we will be adopting them either in 6 months after the 6-month waiting period, which is now 4 months from now, or whenever the case moves forward. I'm gonna be honest with you, right now, this past week was a really hard week for us. Really hard week for my husband and I. We just, we're in the throes of adopting and adjusting to this new placement. And, some behaviors are starting to come out of the woodwork. And then on top of that, we've just had a stressful week for other reasons as well. So I might be a little more negative in this video than my previous one, but I want this to be very honest. I want this to be like an open, honest look about what adoption and foster care really looks like. And this is just as much for me to look back on and see kind of where we were and how far we've come in the future, as it is to help others of you who are either foster adoptive parents yourself or who maybe want to be someday. So I hope that this gives you a realistic, honest look at what adoption is like. But I am going to go ahead and start with the positives because there are quite a few positive scenarios that are going on. And actually, I wrote down a list, and I think writing this list really helped me remember that there are a lot of good things going on and a lot of positive things going on. So the first thing I will say on the positive note is that it could be so much worse than it is. These kids went through a huge transition during a pandemic because as I'm filming this, COVID is still alive and well, unfortunately. All these things are unsure, uncertain, and honestly, it could be so much worse than it is. These kids are handling it pretty well overall. And I think also we're handling it pretty well overall. So I think just considering everything going on in the world, all the unrest, all of, this pandemic going on, we're doing much better than we could be doing. A second positive thing, and this has been a big difference between our first adoption and this one, is that the kids are extremely affectionate with us and they're very open to calling us mom and dad. It wasn't something we tried to push or anything, but they did it from day one. They call us mommy, they call us daddy, they hug us. I mean, when I walk out of my bedroom in the morning or on a weekend, on a Saturday, they're like, mommy, and they give me a big hug, and I just feel like they love us. So that's definitely a really positive thing. And actually, An additional positive from that is that our other daughter, Brielle, who we adopted last year, she really struggled with showing affection to me in particular as a mom. She just, I think with the trauma she went through, separation from a couple different female caregivers, she had a hard time bonding with me. And then also because I worked, I think she felt like betrayed every time I went to work. And so she would kind of like reject me. And being around our new kids has really helped her see. I think they've almost modeled to her what it looks like how kids act towards a mom. And it's been really cool because now I mean, part of it is we just kind of turned a corner lately with her, but I also think she's been seeing how they respond to me and then knowing how to act, and she's kind of emulating them. So that has been awesome for me because when you get home from work and you're like, hi, and then your toddler's like, no, mommy, no, touch me. Like, it's not the best feeling, I'm just gonna be honest. So it's been really nice to now, like when I go to work and I come home, she's usually like, hi, mommy, I missed you. She gives me a hug. Like, I just feel like she's learning more, and it's partially because she's learning from them. And another comparison to our previous adoption with our youngest daughter is that I had a really hard time with knowing how to deal with adopting a toddler. I felt like a lot of our foster care training was preparing us more for adopting a school-age kid or an older kid. And so when we got placed with an 18-month-old, we were excited. But then once the reality hit in and I was like, set in, I was just kind of like, I don't know how to, spot trauma in a toddler as much as I do in an older kid. And with a toddler, you can't sit down and talk about things and explain things and talk through what's going on. And that's one of my strengths as a parent, is being able to like talk through things with kids. Like, I'm a teacher as well, and it just really helps me. But when it's a toddler, you can't talk about things. And I had a whole video about toddler adoption, which I will link above. Yeah, you can watch that to get an idea of what it was like. But with older kids, a big positive of this time is I feel like, one, it's really easy for me to tell why they are doing something. Not always, but compared to our youngest daughter, I can kind of see like the reason behind a behavior pretty quickly. Even if I don't know how to handle the situation, I still can understand why it's happening. And with a toddler, it's like kind of like a guessing game. Like, are they just being a toddler, or is it like a trauma response? So with our older kids, it's been easier, and I feel like I know how to talk them down or talk to them and make sure that they like understand what's going on, understand that we love them, understand that we're not giving up on them. I can like explain that to them, which is really nice. Another thing I will say is that I feel like the kids are really feeling at home with us. I think there's moments where they don't, but I think overall, we even heard our son on the phone with his foster mom that he was with before, who's this like wonderful woman in her 80s who just like loves him, and they call her grandma and stuff. But he was on the phone with her and he said, I'm starting to really feel like this is home now. And he is not like a kid who talks on the phone. He doesn't usually say anything. So the fact that he said that to us was just like really reaffirming that he really feels comfortable. And so that is a huge positive, that he's already feeling that way, because we thought he was going to struggle the most with the adjustment and he didn't quite understand what was going on, but he's really like embraced it. And he's so like I said, so affectionate and cuddly, and so is his sister. They're both very like affectionate with us, and they feel comfortable to hug us and feel comfortable to be like physically near us, which I feel is really important for bonding. So that has made it a little bit easier on that end. And on top of that, I feel like because they're feeling more comfortable, they're kind of needing their foster mom less. And we were very open, like, you guys can call on the phone whenever you need to. We've already visited her once. Like, we're trying to maintain that connection because that's a really important connection for them. But, at first they were calling her like every day or every other day, and it's kind of like spaced out more, and we're always happy to let them talk, but it's just kind of nice to see that they don't need it as much now, because I think they're feeling a little more settled here. Another really fun thing, which is not something you expect when you adopt older kids, is we've had so many first experiences with them, like way more than you would anticipate. Now, I know a lot of kids who are in foster care have never done different things, but these kids have been in a really stable, healthy foster home for 3 years before coming to us. you know, you kind of think they've probably done all these things. Like, I'm not going to experience a lot of first times with them, like, at least not their first time doing it, maybe our first time doing things together. But I mean, we've already experienced like one kid's first time swimming, their first time putt-putting, their first time going on a vacation, their first time going to a wedding. There's just like so many firsts. It's only been 2 months, and there's so many firsts that we've experienced. So that's been really cool to see. And I think for those of you who maybe worry about adopting an older kid because you won't get those firsts, like, you'll still get firsts. Like, you have no clue. Sometimes these kids have not done much at all because of their situation and their family. So if that's what's keeping you back from adopting older kids, like, don't let that stop you. And the last thing I want to talk about in terms of like the positive sides of what's going on is just that our boundaries that we have set for ourselves this time have been so much better than last time. When we first adopted our daughter, we just felt like we had no boundaries. And it is a lot harder when you have a little kid who needs constant supervision to set those boundaries. But we kind of learned later on that we really should have been a little more careful with like our boundaries, and especially making sure that we got time together as a couple. And that's just something we personally really need. And I feel like maybe we need that more than some other people do, or, you know, it's more of a priority to us, I guess, than to some other people. And so that's been really helpful. I feel like it's helped my mental health. It's helped me not get as upset about things, or I don't know. It's helped me not get as emotional and to fall into this kind of like post-adoption blues as easily. Now for the hard parts. And I just want to say some of these things have been really, really hard. And I don't want to sugarcoat it. I don't want to pretend that it's all been sunshine and roses and we're just a perfect happy family. And I never think like, what have I done? Because there are moments where I think that. But I still, at the end of the day, will first of all always say that I love my kids and I'm glad that we are adopting them. I never really truly regret what we've done. And I would never like discourage someone from adopting just because it's hard, because like it's okay to do hard things, and it's okay to do things that are, you know, difficult. And I personally, like, I'm a Christian, and I think that like God doesn't always call us to do things that are easy. Like, he calls us to be sacrificial and to, you know, to try things that are difficult. And it might mean our life isn't as comfortable or our life isn't as easy, but it's still worth it. And it's still like a worthwhile thing to do. And there's so many, like I said, like all the positive things, there's so many beautiful things that come from as well. But I'm also not going to pretend that there aren't really hard things. So let's jump into those. So one of the biggest ones we've dealt with is sibling fighting. First of all the kids are kind of jealous of our time that's spent with any other kid, so we feel really like pulled every which way. Like, if one kid is cuddling with us, the other kids want to be cuddling with us, and it's like always this fight and always this like who gets more time. And you know, if you say a nice thing trying to like reaffirm one of the kids, the other kids are like, what about me? And I'm like, I say things to you too, like. And so it's just kind of exhausting. And then also they're getting in fights. Our older kids have never had like a 2-year-old little sibling. They're not used to it. And I'll be honest, 2-year-olds can be really annoying sometimes. They don't have good boundaries. They tend to just like jump on you and do crazy stuff all the time. And so, you know, needless to say, they get frustrated with her. At the end of the day, they still love her, because every morning they're like, is she awake yet? Can we go see her? And I'm like, don't wake her up. Like, just let her be. But then of course, once she's awake, they're like, I need a break from her. She's driving me crazy. And so it's kind of that love-hate relationship. Our youngest has struggled a lot with jealousy because she's 2, you know, everything is hers, everything's mine. That's just what 2-year-olds are like, but that's being amplified because now she has to share not only her house and her puppy and her toys, but also her mom and dad, who she also was adopted and has that trauma. And so it is definitely a little bit of a challenge, but I mean, there are good and bad days. You know, it really depends on the day. Another thing with siblings is that I mentioned earlier that our daughter has picked up on our kids, like, you know, nice things, like being kind to me and greeting me in a nice way, but she has equally picked up like all of their bad habits. Every like phrase they say that's kind of rude, she's picked it up too, and she does it too. You know, it's what it's like when you have siblings and you have a little kid around. They just mimic everything they hear, and it's just been, you know, having to remind the kids like, hey, you have a little sister now, like you're a role model. If you say something, she's gonna say it too. Like, so maybe be careful what you say, just a thought. I know that this next one is the hardest one for me, and I know that like this is just part of being a mom, but the amount that I feel needed by these kids at this point in the process is extremely, extremely draining to me. First of all, I'm an introvert. I value my time by myself. I value my time like recharging and things like that. I do not like to be around groups of people all the time, especially if they're really loud or overstimulating to me, which 3 kids are, you know? And so that in and of itself is hard. So even if I had kids who were biologically mine, if they were kind of like loud and crazy, that would be hard for me. But it's amplified by the fact that they are also in this beginning stage of being adopted. There's some insecurity there. And so the cleanliness level is like way higher than it normally would be. And then I think that it probably will be in the future. It makes complete sense why it's there right now. Like they're going through this big transition. They don't fully like know us yet. We don't fully know them yet. We're still getting to know each other. We're still, you know, seeing each other at our worst and our best. And I think that cleanliness is really, it's kind of a good sign. It's kind of a good sign that they want to be with us. But I also think, you know, it's that attachment isn't really secure yet. And so they're overly clingy, and then it's overly draining to me. Just to be clear, like, I know this is a part of adoption, but that doesn't make it any less hard. So sometimes I feel like people are like, well, that's what they tell you that in your training, like blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, but it's totally different hearing it in your training and experiencing it. And I also think there is something to be said, like certain personalities, certain types of people are more okay with being around people all the time. And like my threshold is already low, and then to have like 3 kids on top of that and really clingy behaviors at this point, it's very draining to me. If I'm being honest, it is. This kind of goes into my next 2 negative sides of things. The first one is that we didn't really feel like we had the support we expected to have in the first like couple months, especially like the first month of them being in our home. That first month can be really rough. We had some really good times then, but also some hard ones. And it's really hard to get childcare when you are doing foster care, because everybody has to be fingerprinted. And the fingerprinting, like our agency does, we can get up to 3 people fingerprinted for free. But then after that, we have to pay $50 per person get fingerprinted. That doesn't include if we're paying them for childcare. So at the beginning, we only really had 1 person here who had gotten fingerprinted, and it was my best friend. So all the pressure was on her. Like if we needed to get out of the house, we had to go somewhere, and we needed childcare, it was all on her, which I feel like 1 is not fair to her, and 2 makes us feel really guilty when we have to ask her to do things all the time. And I just didn't like being in that situation. I think trapped is the best way I can put it. And, you know, it is what it is. Now, I will say since then, more people we know have been fingerprinted, but we just feel like we got a lot less support this time around than we did the first time we adopted. Like when the first time we adopted, people were like giving us stuff all the time. They were like, oh, here's some baby clothes, here's some toys, we're having a baby shower for you, we're gonna do all these things. People did like a meal train and dropped food off at our house. And you know, it's just kind of funny because at that point we were adopting 1 kid who was like a little kid, and most people consider that the easy type of adoption. I would beg to differ, it's not that easy, but according to like most of the people we talk to, us adopting 2 kids who are older is like crazy, and like, oh my gosh, that's amazing that you could do that. But at the same time, we didn't get nearly as much support this time. And I do think the fact that we're in a pandemic had a huge hand in that. but it was a little bit hard. I don't know, maybe our expectations were kind of a little too high. And I say that because I say that in a way that to like flatter the people we know around us, because they took care of us really well when Brielle moved in with us. And so I think we got our expectations like, oh, people are going to do these things for us and everything. And that's just not how it went. And it's okay. Like since then, like I said, a lot more people have gotten fingerprinted. We've had like babysitting and stuff like that, and it's been a lot better. But it's hard in the first 2 months, almost 2 months, of feeling a little bit trapped and being like, I don't know, we can even like go take our kid to an appointment because it's a pandemic and you can't take the other kids. And I just think we're in a better spot now, but it was definitely hard at the beginning. I don't want to come across ungrateful. We've had a great community. We've been supported in other ways, like people ask how we're doing and things like that. And we've had families support us and help us with things. I don't want to sound like we're not being supported. It's just compared to the first time. But this next one is where I really get frustrated. I mentioned earlier that one of the positive parts of this is that we have actually set some healthy boundaries this time around. And I'm gonna lay it out for you, and you might judge me, but one of these boundaries is that we go on a date like once a week. And we get out of the house and we go on a date. Now, I didn't think that that seemed like such a crazy thing to do, but apparently to some people that's like crazy. They like never go on dates. Like it's just like unheard of. But for us, like this is something we need. And I'll be honest, I think one of the reasons we need it is because these kids are being adopted. They're not our biological kids. We don't have this automatic bond and bond that we formed since the time they were an infant. We're bonding with a 10-year-old who has this whole life before she came here, has stories about her life that I don't know, has things that she's probably never disclosed to anyone, or especially not to me. She has all these ideas of how things should be. She has a different worldview. Even with our 6-year-old, he has like an idea of how things should be and everything like that. And that makes sense, but it does make it hard because we're bonding with them. We're not just like spending time with our kids and we're getting a little tired. It's like we are constantly trying to figure them out, to understand them, to get to know them. And because there's not that secure attachment yet, like I mentioned earlier, they're extremely clingy. They want to be with us, right near us, every second of every day. And it's not that to that phase yet where it feels really natural on our end either. We're still getting to know them, and some of the behaviors that we see, like I'm not going to really go into them, but some of the behaviors we see are really frustrating. And even though I 100% understand why they're happening, it doesn't make them not frustrating, if that makes sense. And it's just exhausting. And so for me to be able to be present with them and self-regulated, emotionally regulated while I'm with them, I need some time away from them during the week. And so we've done things like we've set up, they have quiet time on the weekends or in the summers when it was summer, 2 hours a day in the middle of the day when our daughter naps. And it helps her nap and it helps us get some time away from them to get things done or to rest or whatever. They also go to their rooms an hour before they go to sleep, and they have like kind of like wind down time. And this is good for them, but it's ultimately like we kind of needed that time for us not to go crazy. And I will say my best friend told me, she said, I kind of feel bad about it because people make you feel bad about that stuff sometimes. Like, why would you need that time? Why would you need a break from them? And I'm first of all, I'm like, I feel like if you were in our shoes, you would understand why you need a break, but I'll let that slide. But, my friend said, you guys are people who are okay with asking for help. You're honest about what you need, and a lot of people aren't. And she's like, I think it's good that you're honest with yourselves and honest with others about what you need. So I'll take that. I'll take that little compliment, I guess. But yeah, if I'm being honest, like I need time away from them, and I don't think it makes me a bad parent, because I think if I didn't take the time away, I'd be a bad parent. But I will say it's so frustrating because there's this paradox when you're an adoptive or foster parent where people will say, they'll say things like, I could never do what you do. It's so hard. You're such a saint. These kids are so lucky. And it's like, and it's very uncomfortable when people say that. Well, first of all, because I'm like, I think a lot more people could adopt or foster than they think. Because sometimes I've had people say that to me and I'm thinking, I'm pretty sure you'd be better at this than I am. I'm just actually doing it, like, because I just, decided to. But I think if you really put your mind to it, you'd be great at it. So there's that side of things. They put you on this pedestal, like you're doing something that's so hard, and they'll say, I could never do it. But then on the other hand, when you're like, yeah, it's pretty hard, I think I need to take a boundary and like set a boundary and take a little break for my kids, they're like, why do you need a break? I wouldn't need a break. Like, it's kind of, and I say that really attitude-y. They're not all saying it attitude-y, but it's kind of like this implied, why would you need a break? And I'm just like, you just said you could never do this, but you think you can do it with no break. Sorry. And I think a lot of times parents who have not adopted, but they're still parents, they want to show you that like what you're going through is normal. Like, I think it's coming from a place of, I want to show you like, it's okay, you're not alone in this, but it comes across like, well, every kid does that. All parents go through that. Like, what's wrong with you? Why do you need a break? I don't know. Maybe I'm being really sensitive to it, but that is something that I have been experiencing lately, and it happened the first time around with our adoption too. But I just want to say too, like, it's been really great because we do have people in our lives who are willing to listen and listen without judgment. And like, even though they've never adopted, they've never fostered, they have like listening ears. I guess that's the best way to put it. And they're willing to hear our side of the story and to listen to it and say like, I believe you, that does sound really hard, that would be difficult. Like, instead of saying, well, every kid's like that, those comments aren't as helpful. So I'm really grateful that we have those people in our lives who are willing to kind of hear us out and not just be like, well, what'd you expect? We told you it'd be hard. Like, obviously it's gonna be hard. And obviously we knew that, but that, it's just nice to have those people who are not just trying to be like, I told you so, and just encouraging us and wanting us to be able to talk about things and kind of process with them. So that is our update. I've talked for a long time. I'll probably have to edit this down significantly, but thank you so much for following along with our journey. I will probably film another update like this. Maybe I'll do it every 2 months. That seems like kind of good since I did the first one about 2 months ago. I'll do another one in 2 months and we'll kind of see where we are, because 2 months from now, they will have been with us for 4 months, which is kind of crazy to me. On some days it feels like they've been here for a lot longer than that, but it's kind of cool to see some of these milestones passing by. And if you are not subscribed yet, please don't forget to hit the red subscribe button down below. And you can also hit that little bell icon. It will notify you whenever I post a new video. I do post new videos pretty much every week, unless things are insane, and things have been insane, and I'm still posting videos. So you might as well subscribe so you can get some more adoption themed videos. Also, if you have any ideas for videos that would be helpful for you, like it's really easy for me right now to do those like sit down informational videos while my kids are in quiet time on Saturdays. So if you have a topic you'd like me to talk about, you can just write it in the comments and I'll put it on my list. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day.